by the way, on those lanyards, there's a massive eBay market in lanyards. I don't know if you knew this. And I only found out because I got into a box. I spent a lot of my time covering the sports events around the world, and they give you a lanyard with your accreditation. It says the Olympics or, you know, World Cups. And I didn't realise that people really, really are interested in them. And they'll pay you from £1 to £5 to £10 for a lanyard, which, as far as I'm concerned, is going towards my holiday fund because they're just sitting in a box. But I didn't realise there was a massive market in them. My job today is I'm not coming to tell you how to do this, or you know how you run a radio station. So please, this is just us explaining what we do with N Live, what are the benefits for us, and we hope what the benefits are for N Live. During the summer, I was thinking, what on earth are we going to do during the World Cup? This is unusual. World Cup during term time, usually in June and July. And in the sports department, we can't let this happen without being involved. And also, I was thinking, the students, many of whom are mad about football, are going to want to watch the World Cup. And it's also during university time. So I thought we've got to get it into our teaching. And I have to say, immediately I thought about Martin and N Live. And I thought, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's see if we can do a show. I was thinking, could we do one every day? And we're going to do a live blog. And when I firstly said that, I thought, oh my God, maybe I'm going to give them too much to do. But I'm going to explain what we did and how I was kind of bowled away by the fact that they threw themselves into it. And I think they threw themselves into it because it was real. It was a real community radio station, and they were excited about it. So I've got just a very short video to play you of what we did.
Good evening, I'm Lucy Church and welcome back to the World Cup show here on N Live Radio.
Hello, good evening. You're listening to the World Cup show on N Live Radio.
Today we take a look at last night's semi-final and we highlight the career of a former cobbler who went on to represent Wales.
Put down on the CV, you know, I've got 4 weeks of editing a daily radio show. I'm much better at putting out packages now. I can get in there and do it 5 minutes or so.
It's given me a massive insight on how to do radio, and I'd love to do radio as a job past graduation.
Confidence, learning new skills, being versatile. I was getting stories out and presenting for the first time.
I've learned that you have to keep really tight to deadlines. It's really important that you work collaboratively with your team and that you pull your own weight.
Last year, the National Centre for Domestic Violence released figures stating that incidents of domestic abuse increased by 26% when England play.
I think Jordan Pickford as well had a great game. You know, made some great saves while the game was 0-0. If one of them goes in, it's a completely different ball game.
That's all for now. Remember to tune into our live blog at 6 p.m. this evening to keep a track of all tonight's action.
Thanks for listening and have a good evening.
Okay, so in short, I'm not going to bore you with loads of PowerPoints, by the way. I know how boring that can be. In my opinion, it's a win-win situation. Firstly, for the students, it gave them a real live situation. This wasn't, oh, we're going to do a radio show in there and we're just going to listen to it afterwards. This was a deadline every night. The show went out between, I can't remember, was it 5, 6? So they had to get their segments together that we then provided to Martin, and it was it was music with segments about the World Cup. But I think most importantly, they had to think about the listeners. This isn't studio radio. It's also not Radio 5 Live. So our goal wasn't to do wall-to-wall football. We had to take football to an audience that we know with N Live probably doesn't listen a lot to football. So we had to make it much more local, and we also had to take it away from just being about football. So you would have heard on that video there a story about domestic violence, which is actually a massive thing during the World Cup, unfortunately. Primarily men have a few too many beers and go home, I'm afraid, and beat their partners up. And it increases during the World Cup. It's something that our listeners were interested in, but not just that kind of heavy story. They were also doing light stories about, you know, was it a boom for the pubs? Didn't, kind of mixed view on that one. So they went out and talked to the pubs of Northampton. The kind of story I think that community radio's really interested in. But it made them think about the listeners. And that's really important because they weren't thinking, well, students will be interested in this. No, the listeners, as Martin says, I think 35 plus, aren't they, Martin? So 35 plus and older. And they're not sports fans, not necessarily, but they want to hear how a sports event will make an impact upon their lives. So that's what we were generally doing. And then, of course, experiences for the CV. The one thing, Will Dyer, who was the guy who was talking about being an editor for 6 weeks, I saw a real development in him as a manager. Because I said to you, I tell you what, I'm not running this. You've got to run your own meetings. And they'd never done that before. In the newsroom, right, 20-odd staff, what are you going to say to them? How are you going to motivate them for 60-odd matches? It's quite the World Cup goes on and on and on. It goes on for weeks. You've got to keep your stamina. It's a marathon, not a sprint. They had to do that. They had to do simple things like a rota. I'm sure all of you guys have to do rotas. Most boring thing on the planet, most important thing, and also you're the most powerful person when you do it, obviously. They had to do that, and I made them do that. So I'm not doing this, you're doing this. So they were getting real experiences, and the very fact that it was with a real radio station, that slot was there every night, they had to fill it. There was no, oh yeah, well, you know, dog ate my homework situation. It was a real situation. And I think that took them to another level. And my experience with students is, if you put them out of their comfort zone, 9 times out of 10, they deliver. They may not want to go and do it initially because they're worried of failing, like all of us. But once you put them in that situation, and N Live gave us that situation that we could throw them into, a real live radio situation. Win-win for this radio station. Obviously, it's a recruitment opportunity. You saw that Ben, who was the second student on that, he talked about he hadn't done much radio, now he was getting excited about it. That's basically a big experience that we have in general. People come along and they want to do telly. And we teach, obviously, television, radio, multimedia, websites, written what I call newspapers. I'm sure maybe one or two you read a newspaper. I do still, because I'm dead old and old-fashioned. But we teach them everything. And sometimes they come with, I want to be Sky Sports' next presenter. And then they start doing radio, and they realise that radio has the benefit of a little bit more time for analysis, a bit more intimacy with the listener. And suddenly they go, oh, I quite like this. And they get into radio, and they end up going into a radio. I think, so it's a recruitment opportunity. And obviously our journalism students get involved with bulletins and things like that, with the news bulletins with the radio station. I think the benefit for the station, it puts young voices and opinions on the station. I don't run a community radio station, but I'm sure if I did, I would want to have as many different voices from the community as I possibly could have. Can't be just white, can't be just women, can't be just straight. It's got to have that mixture. So I think having some young voices on there was probably a good thing. And it, at the same time, expanded the subjects on the station. It took took, if you like, the N Live listener, who is not a 5 Live listener, I don't think, largely. It took them into the world of football, but they made it relevant, not just through those sort of serious news stories around it, but they also did things like how somebody from Northampton, like a Cobblers player, the Cobblers football team, nicknamed the Cobblers here in Northampton Town, how they had a link with the World Cup. And believe me, some of them were tenuous, but they were magnificent. The real local stories were, I think, was one of the real successes of it. So they didn't just do the pubs, they did sporting people who'd come through, you know, some guy who'd once played 4 matches for Northampton Town is somehow playing for Croatia in the World Cup, or something like that, or played for Yugoslavia at the 1958 World Cup, that kind of thing. And they did a lot of digging and finding some really interesting voices, which I thought was fantastic. So in short, what I think NLive did was open the door to a new opportunity. And I think this is what community radio does, especially. It opens that door for students to have a go, to go into that uncomfortable zone and get involved. Because in broadcasting, anybody knows that the more you talk, I mean, all of you guys, I'm sure know this, the more you talk, the better you get. You've been through that situation when that clip doesn't work. Oh no, that sting's not working, what are we going to do? You don't panic, you keep calm, but you only get that through doing it. You can't do a degree in multimedia journalism and then say, oh, right, I'm ready to go out in the world now, if you haven't actually done it. It's like trying to be a professional footballer. You've got to play some matches. And I think this is what NLive does for us. And I think the World Cup was something that took it to a new level, in my opinion, but we're going to continue doing it. So on Wednesday, I know, I'm sure you've read about it in the papers, we have our big varsity event, which is basically where the university plays a variety of sports, from netball to cheerleading, to rugby, football, etc., archery, against the University of Bedfordshire as our kind of, inverted commas, local rivals. Last year it was here. On Wednesday we're going to Bedford. And what we do is treat it like a kind of mini Olympics. So they have to set up their own desk, and we're going to jump in on a coach and go into Bedford. We're going there to set up our own desk and run a live blog and do another evening radio show. So exactly what we did during the World Cup. And the great thing about this is we're also not just doing it for NLive Radio, we're going to be doing some stuff for Radio Lab, which is the community radio station in Luton, which also has a link with the university. I'm not quite sure Martin's as unique as he thinks he is, but because that's where I used to teach at university, and Terry Lee runs that radio station in a similar way. So this is what we did last year, and this is my final bit, and then I'm very welcome to take any questions. I hope I haven't done boredom by PowerPoint. This is our video from last year, so this is what we'll be doing on Wednesday.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's NLive Radio Sports Show Varsity Special. I'm Craig Evans, and over the next hour we'll be taking you through the day's fixtures and results of the Northampton University Varsity Sports Day against the University of Bedfordshire.
These were the chants we could hear echoing through the Sports Dome this morning as we watched the University of Northampton netball teams win against the University of Bedfordshire teams.
Esports is making its debut in the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham this summer and was included in the programme today as an exhibition sport.
It's full time here at Waterside Campus. A great day for Northampton University men's football twos after they came from behind to beat Bedford University 6-1.
If you would like a recap of all of today's action, then head over to nliveradio.com and have a read through our live blog. It's been great to see students back in sporting action after a 3-year break, and what a resounding victory for Northampton.
There you go. That's me. If you have any questions, I'll be delighted to answer them. That, by the way, was that was all recorded here. So the great thing is we can record, or obviously we can record everything in our radio studios if you get a chance to look at them, and we can link directly to NLive, which is only 5 minutes away. But obviously, if you had to leg it in the old days with a video or a cassette recorder or whatever, it would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that through the power of Myriad anyway, to be fair, which obviously we use Myriad.
Yes.
And in addition to these specialist sport projects we've done, and I think the World Cup was really great.
Yeah.
Really great. And actually and Adrian covered it, one of the main remits I gave them as the station managers is I want local. I want this to be a local take on the World Cup, and they certainly did it.
They did, yeah.
It was all clips and bass. But the other part of the relationship that we've got with the university is the university is a BJTC, which is Broadcast Journalism Training Council accredited university, and as part of their academic side, the radio news days, we do shared output with NLive Radio. So quite often the second and the third years, when they actually produce bulletins, they're read live on NLive during the day. We do 3 or 4 bulletins live during the day, and that gives them that real world experience. But then also we do a local news bulletin that's pre-recorded that goes out during the day, and that's exclusively by university journalism students.
And I forgot to say, Martin, sorry to interrupt you, that we did do an all-night radio special for the general election, all night, which was quite a challenge, I know, to fill 8 hours of stuff, but getting them working all night was also a good thing just to get used to, because when you start off in journalism, they don't give you the good shifts. You know, you're going to be on the all night or the 4 o'clock get up for the, for the breakfast show. So, and that was, obviously that was 2019. You forget when we had an election, there've been so many different prime ministers since then, when we actually got a chance to say whether we wanted one of them. That was 2019, wasn't it?
And actually that was simulcast. There was a couple of community stations that carried it, because we did it as a national.
Yes, we did.
We had BJTC students from other universities at counts across the country. I think we ended up going to about 70, 80 different counts across the country.
Yeah.
And we syndicated that to a couple of other community stations, or where they maybe took their own local coverage until it was declared, and then they switched over to us, because we were trying to offer it up as a national sustaining service. And whilst I wouldn't necessarily want to repeat it anytime soon, and who knows...
Well, we will do it. If there is another election,
absolutely,
we will do it,
it'd be something we're keen to do, particularly through the UKCRN, and offer it up to other community stations as a through-the-night sustaining service as well. Thank you very much, Adrian Wall.
Thank you.